Hi guys, I hope you're doing great today. In the last two lectures, we installed a Linux VM on our VMware player and then we tried to access it via a server accessibility tool which is known as PuttyGen. We tried to access, that was just a demo. That's how we remotely access our servers which are hosted on cloud platforms. The first method was to access the server using password-based authentication. As you guys know that I used the password of my user and then I tried to access the server from PuttyGen. But the password-based authentication is considered as less secure because the people normally use less strong passwords. But it does not mean that the passwords are not sent in a secure manner. The passwords are secure, but normally people use less strong passwords, so there are strong chances of passwords getting brute force attacked. And that's why the alternate method of using SSH keys to communicate with Linux server is used a lot. And that's why the alternate method of SSH keys is mostly used to communicate with Linux servers. The SSH keys consist of a private key and a public key, which are cryptographically secure keys and can be used to authenticate a client to an SSH server. For instance, I have PuttyGen installed on my computer. I will use the keys to communicate or to connect with my remote VM. So in each key pair, there is a private key and a public key. That's why it is known as a key pair, SSH key pair. So a private key and a public key make a key pair. Both keys are different. The private key is owned by me or the user. The private key is retained by the client. It is user like me or you. You will keep the private key in a secure place, because if your private key gets compromised, it means that your server is going to be compromised too. The public key is placed on the remote server. The public key can be shared publicly, but I would not recommend to share it publicly. Now let's dig into it more. This is my client and this is my server. The client will have the private key, the server will have the public key. So I will use my private key on my client like PuttyGen, and that private key will communicate with the public key on the server. That public key is normally located in the authorized keys folder. I will show you. And this is our Ubuntu machine. So when a client attempts to communicate with the server using SSH keys, I will use the private key and they match. When a client attempts to authenticate using SSH keys, the server can test whether the client possesses the private key or not. And if the client proves that I have the private key, man, let me in. And after that, a session is established. So that's how the SSH keys work to communicate or to connect with our servers, Linux servers, remotely. Let me repeat it again. I am the client. I want to connect with my remote Ubuntu VM. I have the key, private key. I will use this private key on my client, on my tool like PuttyGen, and then I will try using the IP or host name of that Ubuntu remote VM or virtual machine or server, and then the server will test whether the private and public key match with each other. It does not mean that if I'm using a random private key or private key of anything else and I want to communicate with the remote VM. No, the private and public keys should match with each other. It does not mean that I'm using any random private key and I want to communicate or connect with a remote VM if it has any public key. No, the key pairs should match. And if the SSH keys match with each other, they communicate with each other. Oh, you are my private key and private key says you are my public key. Then a terminal or session is started. I hope now you understand how these SSH keys work, but let's do this practically. Alright guys, in the last lecture you saw that we connected with the VM using the password. Like, let me do it again. Putty, that was the saved VM that I saved, and I will open it. Let me change the settings so that you can clearly see it. Font, I will change it to 20. Alright, and apply. Okay, now you can see that it is asking for the user, DevOps, Molvi, and the password. Sorry, I think the password didn't work. Okay, I'm in using the password. Now I will use the SSH keys to connect with the server, to connect with the VM. That would be SSH key based authentication. I will generate a public and a private key pair. So there are two methods to create these keys. First of all, I will create the key pair from my Windows PC and use to connect with the VM. Then I will create the key pair from the VM itself and I will use those keys to connect from my Windows machine. Now I will use the method number one. I will create the keys from my Windows PC using PuttyGen. That's a tool installed while we use or install Putty. I mean, when we install Putty, the PuttyGen is also installed. So let me create our key pair. I will exit from the VM. Okay, now go to your start bar and you can see PuttyGen here. This is the tool to generate keys. In Linux, the tool or the command that will be used would be Keygen, SSH Keygen, and PuttyGen is used in Windows. Now it says that you can generate it from here. I will click the generate button to generate the key. Okay, now it says that please generate some randomness by moving the mouse over the blank area. You can see I am moving the mouse. Okay, now you can see that this is my public key. I will save it in my folder. This would be my public key. I can save it in a text document, public key. For instance, I will save it in a text document and then I will change the extension. File, save, close it. Now I will change the extension from txt to pub. The pub is the extension of, yes, this is my public key. And now I will save the private key. Private key here. Are you sure you want to save this key without a passphrase to protect it? Yes, I will not use the passphrase. I will not use the passphrase. Yes. And my private key. And it will save both keys here. So this would be my private key and I will keep it on my PC. I will not share it with anyone and I will use this public key on my VM. So I will copy that public key from here again. Make sure you copy the full key and I will log in again on the server. Dev VM. This time I would have to log in via password. DevOps Molvi. And now again, and I will apply and session. I didn't save it before. Now it will be 20 every time I log in. I hope you can clearly see it now. So there is a file where I will save the key, public key, which is located in cd home DevOps Molvi. You will have this user, whatever user you create, you will have this directory by default. When we create, we will study in detail about user management in Linux and .ssh. This would be the directory where we will save. You can see the authorized keys. I will edit it. Nano command with I have pasted, Control X and yes. Now cat to see the content of this file. You can see that my public key has been saved. Okay, now exit, and we will now use the keys to connect with our VM. So that was our VM. I will load it. Now I will go to connection. You can see there is SSH extend, and now there is auth. Click on it and credentials. It says that private key file for authentication, sorry, and I will browse my private key here. Okay, you got it, and I will save the session so that every time I don't have to give the key. Save it, and now my private key is saved. I will use the keys to connect with VM. It will not ask for the password now. Login as which user? We have DevOps Molvi. You can see that it is saying that authenticating with public key, and we are in our VM without giving the password. Let me try it again. I will create another session, duplicate. You can see DevOps Molvi, and I will just enter, and it says that authenticating. Login as DevOps Molvi, authenticating with public key, this one, and I am into my VM without giving the password. So that was the first way to create keys from your Windows machine. You will have to open PuttyGen, and then you can generate a key pair of public and private keys and use those keys to connect with your VM. Alright guys, in the second method we will create the key pair from our Linux VM. So I am already logged into my VM, and I will use the SSH Keygen command to create the keys. SSH, you can run it anywhere, Keygen on your VM by the way. Okay, it is saying that generating public private RSA key pair. RSA, DSA, these are just encryption methods, and enter file in which to save the key. You can see that it is giving us the default path for our key, so I will just enter it. I don't want to change the path. And passphrase, no passphrase. We will have another tutorial where we will use the passphrase as well. So enter, and you can see that our key pair has been generated. Home DevOps Molvi and .ssh ls-l. You can see we have two keys here created now, and I will copy the private key, which is cat idrs. That is my private key. So I will copy it from here and here. So it has been copied, and I will save it into my some text file. You can text document and new private key. Okay, I will change the extension save, and I will save it. Now I will just rename it ppk. So it has been now changed to private key. But remember that this key won't work. How? Let us test it. Now I try to log in to the VM again using these new keys. Okay, so this is my VM. I will go to SSH auth credentials. You can see I will give the path of the private key here, and I will save the session. For now, open. So it is saying that unable to use key file, which is located here, new private key, new format. So this format is not working actually. It will ask us for the password again. You can see. So I don't want to use the password. I want to use the keys. So there is a problem with the key that we need to fix using the PuttyGen. I will load my private key here, and now I will save it again with the same name, new private key, and I will overwrite it. Yes, and close. Now I will try to log in. And it still says that unable to use key file. Not my private key, it will be new private key, putty SSH auth credentials, load VM credentials, and now here I need to check the new private key. Okay, again new private key, yes. So I will open it. Now it is not giving any error. Login as DevOps Molvi, and server refused our key. Why? The reason is, I know the reason, but you should search it, you should troubleshoot it. But let me quickly tell you the reason. Because we need to save the public key in our authorized keys. This is our public key. I will just copy it, and authorized keys I will here paste the key. Yes, and key has been pasted. So now I will try again. Duplicate session. This session has been expired, so close it. DevOps Molvi, and tada, it is done. So you can see that we have to copy our key, the public key, in authorized keys file, because this keys authorized key file, this one, is one of the most important SSH files, because you take the public keys from your team and just paste those keys in this authorized keys file. So those public keys will have the authorization to connect with the VM. Now a private key will only communicate through the authorized keys, the public keys that are available in the authorized keys file. So that was the only error you can see when let me remove the public key again, so that we are sure that was the error. Control K, key removed. I will save the changes, authorized keys. You can see now it is empty. I will try again to connect with my VM. I will close this session. I don't like to have more sessions, many sessions. So DevOps Molvi server refused our key. So I will again paste the public key into the authorized key and I will try to connect again. Control C. Now that was our public key. I will copy it from here. You can share public keys publicly, just I told in the beginning of the lecture, but I would not recommend to do so. Nano authorized keys, and I will paste the public key again. Yes, there is no need to restart SSH as well. Restart service of SSH. You don't need to. So public key has been pasted into the authorized keys. Now I will duplicate session. Oh, sorry, not this one because it is an older session. Close. I will create a new session with the new key. Load. Just to confirm, I have the new private key and I have new private key. Okay, and I will open it. Login as DevOps Molvi, and we are again connected with the VM using the keys generated from the VM itself. But I have copied the private key onto my machine, and the public key was already in the authorized keys file of the server. So that's how we can communicate using the two ways. Like from Windows we need to use PuttyGen, and from Linux we will use SSH-Keygen command to generate keys, and that's how we communicate or we connect with the Linux server using SSH keys. So I hope it is clear now. I will create a separate video of our server refused key error, so that you guys, if you experience this error, you should watch my video and fix the errors. So in the next lecture, because we are now connected using the keys, so we will disable the login via password. We have to disable password login on the server. It is recommended from security point of view. So in the next lecture we will do this short exercise to disable password based authentication on a Linux server. So stay tuned. I will watch you in the next video.